So, Mr. Chair, just to let you know what we're doing, you just heard the young lady say that recording is in progress. We are also going on YouTube Live, the Wildwood channel. So as soon as Travis completes that, you'll be able to start the meeting, Mr. Ritter. And my apologies for the delay, but the hybrid version of this takes a little bit of extra effort. So thank you for your patience. Mr. Ritter, the show is in your hands. Thank you. You'll need to unmute, sir.
Good evening, all. Do we have a roll call?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Member McCown Foster?
Here.
Member Sineni?
Here.
Member Loja?
Here.
Chair Ritter?
Here.
Alternate Welker?
He's here. I'm looking at him.
Alternate Bartlesmeyer?
Here.
Alternate Marion?
Here.
Council Member Liaison Clark?
Here.
And Planning and Zoning Commission Liaison Lee. All right, we have quorum.
Unless I'm mistaken, the first action is on the July 8th, 2021 draft meeting minutes. Let's see, memorandum to the Board of Adjustment regarding the Monarch Fire Protection District monument sign. And review of the Lafayette High School monument sign. Does anybody have any objection to those meeting minutes?
Mr. Chair,
Sir?
there is another set of meeting minutes, I believe, in the packet. It's for August 12th, 2021. So there are two sets of minutes and two summaries of the discussion we had relating to signage that was intended to be heard by the Board of Adjustment. Thank you.
So we are looking to accept two sets of meeting minutes?
Yes, sir. July 8th and then August 12th. And then the two memorandums prepared by Ms. Keefe relating to the sign variances.
Do we need a motion to accept those minutes?
What I would suggest is if there is no objection, just a motion to approve all four items as presented.
Thank you. Is there any objection to those items? I see a lot of head shaking no.
Mr. Chair, the department would respectfully request a motion to approve as submitted the four items, and then a second and a voice vote will suffice.
Can I actually make that motion?
Since you are the secretary acting as chair, I believe you can, sir.
I'll make that motion. We would need a second.
I will second it.
Thank you very much. I believe that means we can get on to tonight's agenda.
Again, Mr. Chair, if you could just ask for all those in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. And then if there's any abstentions.
Okay. All opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
abstentions?
Thank you,
Sounds like
sir.
it is.
And thank you, members of the board.
Tonight's agenda includes Initial review and discussion of the site photographs and related material for a recently modified fence in conjunction with PZ 10-00 Stuart Monty Robson. Conditional use permit and planned residential development overlay district that authorizes the use of the property as a veterinary clinic with related accessory uses. Subject property is northwest corner of Fox Creek Road and Highway 100. Where are we going with this, Joe?
So with the completion of the reading of the advertisement into the record, the Department of Planning has some introductory comments for the benefit of the board members. And then Ms. Keefe has prepared a slide presentation, which I believe is inclusive of items provided by Dr. Robson, the owner of Fox Creek Veterinary Clinic and the petitioner tonight. Just to provide some background, in 2000, Dr. Robson submitted a request to develop what I would describe as the northeast corner of Fox Creek Road and Route 100 with a veterinary clinic. Ultimately, the design of the site required a planned residential development overlay district to accommodate a major variance to the natural resource protection standards, and then the conditional use permit in the NU non-urban resident district to accommodate the actual veterinary clinic. Dr. Robson and his father were very careful about the design of the site, and the Architectural Review Board was involved in the process of that design of site, including the architecture of all buildings and structures. The architecture was prominent in the discussions both at the Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council, and obviously with the board, given the high visibility of the location on Route 100 at Fox Creek Road. Included in that requirement was a condition, somewhat of an unusual condition, that the fencing be also submitted for architectural review so as to guarantee or at least assure that the fencing would complement the built environment, meaning the main building and other structures. All went well until recent times. Dr. Robson has expanded his business to include small pets, i.e. primarily, I think, dogs, and an area that was used to accommodate turnout of equine, primarily horses, was then converted to accommodate dogs or small pets. To ensure their safety, the fence was modified to include a lattice type of approach so as the dogs couldn't escape, the small pets couldn't escape from it. And obviously next to Route 100 and Fox Creek Road, safety was a high priority. The conversion of the fence, the change to it was brought to the attention of the department, and the department respectfully requested Dr. Robson submit the application packet for consideration by the board. With that, Mr. Chair and members of the board, if with your permission, I'd like Ms. Keefe to go through the slide presentation so you can kind of see what I'm describing. I'll step back to the podium after that concludes for any questions, and then Dr. Robson, I believe, is here tonight and can speak to the change and any other questions you might have as board members. Thank you.
All right, thank you and good evening. As Director Vunich stated, I have a brief slide presentation this evening of a visit to the site. But first, to give you an idea of the location, again, we're talking about the Fox Creek Veterinary Hospital located along Highway 100 and Fox Creek Road. The main building is here. And the fence, the portion of the fence that we are talking about tonight is around this barn building that the business expanded to in, I believe, 2008. Here is a picture looking east of the fence with the barn building. And here is a picture of the fence without the improvement. There is portions of the fence still located on the property, primarily around the main structure. And to give you an idea of how it looks with the main structure, I took a few photos of that of the unimproved fence with the main building. And you can see it goes well with the white trim. Here is again a closer up view of the modified fence with the barn. And this next photograph is meant to juxtapose the modified improvement, the modified fence with the unmodified fence in relation to the barn building. My apologies. Again, a close-up of the fence, and you can see the dog yard. And that's an even better view of the dog yard and the fence with the barn structure. And my last photograph is just to give you an idea of where Highway 100 is in relation to the building with the modified fence. And that ends my presentation. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, as we go from share screen back to the gallery view, again, the request tonight of the board is to authorize the lattice work to be retained on the existing fence. Key amongst the considerations for the board members is that does it complement the existing fence and built environment? If there are any questions of Ms. Keefe, Mr. Newberry, or I at this time, we'd be glad to try to answer them. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'll yield the podium to Dr. Robson.
I don't know that I have any questions. Do any other board members? I'll take that as a no.
Thank you.
Well, I just have one quick question, just to make sure this doesn't, does Wildwood have any fence requirements that this possibly goes against, or is this for the most part, like you said, it's just approving the relationship to the built environment?
This particular requirement is unique to the site. In Wildwood, surprisingly, and it does surprise a number of people, if a fence is 6 feet or less in height, we do not require a permit. We do not require an authorization. For the most part, we depend on subdivision indentures and homeowners associations to basically address fences. The city doesn't. Thank you again. And Mr. Chair, I believe Dr. Robson again is here, and with your permission, he come forward and answer any questions you all might have. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Stu Robson. Thanks to Mrs. Keith and also Mr. Vunich and Mr. Newberry and the board. Thank you for your time. We do appreciate you guys. Keep our city beautiful. So I'm just present. I think they presented the situation well. I'm just present if you guys have any questions or if you need any clarification. I do want to apologize. We sincerely did not know that this was something that was that needed, approval by the board. We have enjoyed just a wonderful relationship with the city and certainly value that. And we apologize that this is something that's even come up and taken your time. But in the intention of this was to try to choose materials that were consistent with what was there, just because we like kind of the beauty of the site. And we feel happy with that. We feel like it really does lend itself well to what's there. We chose that particular material because we thought that it looked nice, to be totally honest. We discussed other colors and other materials, and we just thought that they would be too stark against the white vinyl fence. And we really, you know, and the intention was to just, it was for the safety of the pets, and that's all. This wasn't for any other reason. But I'm available for any questions at all, and I do thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are
Teresa
there
Clark.
any questions from the board?
Mr.
this-
Mr. Chair, Ms. Clark has a question. Sorry.
Yes, Mrs. Clark, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may. My question is, to me, it looks like a lot of white. I really appreciate what you're doing there and that you have brought this, come forward to address this situation. But if we're driving by, this is a very rural area, and we're driving by, it looks in the pictures at least, and I haven't noticed it since I drove down through there, so maybe it's not noticeable, but in the pictures it looks like almost a solid white. And you know, I'm just looking at it like maybe a different color would have, maybe a you know, a tan or something, so it looks like that it's just ground behind it instead of a solid white fence in the middle of rural or our non-urban wildwood. Just a question.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. I'll address that if that's appropriate. Is that okay? We did consider other colors. We thought about that. Our concern with other colors was that it was just not going to look natural and kind of almost bring out a stark contrast with the fence that's there. We thought that it would look better, just kind of blend in better. I know in the photos that it looks like it kind of, from a distance, especially in one of the slides that we showed, that it is kind of a white fence, but it actually looks nice in my humble opinion. That you can see through the fence, and it because it blends in with what's there. We thought that it had the least. Our intention was not to make it look any different than it did before. So that's why we chose the same material, same color. But thank you for your comment.
Anyone else?
I just had a quick question. The lattice, is that a vinyl material?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Which I'm assuming is also what the fence is. So,
Yes, sir.
yes.
We wanted to try to choose something that, just blended in. We really didn't want the fence to compete with the view or kind of the layout, or just kind of the elevations of the practice. We love the way that it looks. We love the way that it looks from the main clinic over to the barn, or just anywhere you're standing. And we certainly didn't want to compete with that. We're the one that's, that look at it every day. So we wanted that. I mean, I'm just saying sincerely, we did want that to kind of blend in and not be unnatural and look like what is there. But there again, we value your opinion and we thank you for it. So. Yes, Ms. Clark.
Again, Chair Ritter, if I may. When I look at the picture, in one area, you have trees planted on this side of it that we see the tree. Have you got any plans of just like planting them on down along the fence line? Because that really just deters your eyes from the fence to the trees.
So there are trees along 100 that were planted when we first built the hospital. All of those trees are thriving and doing quite well. There were trees that were also planted along the fence that were in between the clinic and the barn. And those trees have all they just did not live when we never replanted them. It was our intention to have trees planted all along there. I think it would be nice to have more trees. I think that would be a nice thing. Was it your opinion, Mrs. Clark, that if you had trees there, that maybe that would kind of soften that a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was part of our intent. There's trees along 100, and then just the other trees they never thrived. But we're happy to replant trees there. I think that that would look quite nice.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, Ms. Clark, are you wanting trees that will grow to a certain height? Are you more interested in a low shrub or a low hedge?
If I may, if it's a low hedge, it would cover it more. But I think when I'm just looking at the picture across there where there's, a series of trees and then there's none. Where the trees are, even though they aren't really covering it, it takes my line of sight away from the stark whiteness of that. But yes, if it covered, the more it covered it, the lower the tree is that's covering it, I think it would be better. But I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Just my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, that was our original intention. And the trees just didn't make it from the original planting, so we didn't replace them. But I think that's a great addition and great point. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair and members of the board, what you have is a commitment from the petitioner that if the fence is approved as it exists today, they will do a replanting of additional trees, particularly along Route 100, to further screen it. Thank you.
Mr. Vonich, do we need a motion?
Yes, I believe Dr. Robson would appreciate a motion. I believe Dr. Robson has asked that the fence be approved in its existing condition, but conditioned on the installation of either trees or shrubs, whatever the board would like to, how the board would like to fashion that motion.
I'll make a motion to move to approve the fence as it stands, with the note that additional trees and shrubs should be added to break up the visual impact of the fence.
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstaining? Sounds like it passed.
Great. We do want to thank you guys. What you guys do is really actually quite important. So thanks for keeping our city beautiful. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are 2 items of old business, I believe, are next on the agenda. The first is the second review of the architectural elevations and related materials for a planned non-residential prefabricated metal accessory structure located on the eastern portion of properties located at 101 and 155 Grand Avenue, St. Louis County, locator numbers 26V 34 12 41. I don't know how they read those, but and 26V 34 12 52, which total 1.4 acres in size, FPNU floodplain, non-urban residential district, and occupied by not-for-profit educational recreational use, Wabash, Frisco, and Pacific Railroad, Ward 6. Mr. Vonich, where are we going from here?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a brief presentation. So yes, the second case tonight is a second review of a proposed outbuilding of the Wabash, Frisco, and Pacific Association. But before I go much further, I want to say that while this is the second review, this is in effect the first review. At our last meeting, the applicant experienced technical difficulties and was never able to fully present the project. So we're essentially doing an initial review tonight. The railroad is located at a site at the end of Grand Avenue in the Glencoe community of Wildwood. The miniature railroad that is in operation there has been in operation for decades before the incorporation of the city and thereafter. So they're a longstanding member of our community. The railroad is located entirely the site is located in the floodplain of the Merrimack River. And so the proposed building will have some restrictions attached to it that will be administered by the Department of Public Works in Wildwood. They've also been granted some variances by the Board of Adjustment at their last meeting. This structure does qualify for review by the Architecture Review Board, and tonight the applicant is seeking review and action on their proposed outbuilding. Mr. Kristen, of a dedicated volunteer and board member of the Wabash, Frisco, and Pacific Railroad, is here tonight to present on the project. And with that, I'll conclude by saying that Director Vunich and I are here if you have any questions at this time. Thank you.
You mentioned a variance of sorts.
That is correct. The outbuilding did require some variances associated with it being built in the floodplain, with the size of the building in the floodplain, and also an encroachment into a setback. And it was approved for all such variances and also granted an extension of 2 years for permitting.
And Mr. Chair, if I may add, the variances that were submitted to the Board of Adjustment were first presented to our Department of Public Works. They act as the floodplain administrator for FEMA here in the city of Wildwood, and they endorsed all the variances as well.
Any other questions at this time? Or would you care to go ahead with the presentation? Oh.
Mr. Chair, I'll invite the representative from the WF&P Railroad forward to the podium. And he will provide a brief description of the proposed prefabricated building that is planned on the site.
Good evening, board members. Joe Kristen, representing the WF&P Railroad. As I said, longtime member. I'm also a board member of the Board of Governors for that railroad. We're proposing this building, a storage building, basically, for the expansion of equipment we have obtained for the railroad for the purposes of what we do out there as far as entertainment and educational rides for the public. We operate on Sundays, May through October. The reason we ran out, basically what this is, we run out of space on our property for storage of those pieces of equipment. We're asking that we can put an outbuilding, a 24 by 40 steel structure, prefabricated, in the same area that our existing buildings are, basically, to support the equipment that we use out there to ride the. You have to excuse me, I'm not used to talking in public like this, but so yeah, basically requesting that we can put this prefabricated 24 by 40 storage building. We'll have tracks going in there. That's how we store our equipment. They're miniature railroad cars and locomotives. We ran out of space in our existing operation. We've acquired some new locomotives. We've built new train cars, and we're just looking for a storage building to support these pieces of equipment. And being in a floodplain, there's a lot of work we've had to do to get this. Like they say, we've had everybody's variances, the floodplain, the requirements, a few specific requirements for the building that are necessary to be put in the floodplain has gone through the contractor, and they've been signed off on as far as the structure itself goes, as far as I know. And yeah, so I'm here just to request permission. We're going to match the building with the current buildings that are there in color, the tan with the brown trim. So it will be, it will mimic the other outbuildings we have on the property. I've tried to do this. It's taken a little while to get to this process, but we're here today to present this to you and hopefully receive a permission to put this single story
Things seem to have frozen.
storage unit on the property.
Yeah.
If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I had a question about the garage door color. I just, some of the images, it looks like the existing, or at least overhead doors, are that dark brown, probably to match the trim. Just wondering if that's going to be the same color for these doors as well.
Probably will not, because those buildings were built many years ago, and that we're using a different contractor and a different manufacturer of the building. Now, that certainly can be requested. We haven't gotten that far. We know that they're capable of matching the structure in tan and the trim and gutters in the darker brown. That's a good question. I'm sure that if they're able to commit to making the trim in a darker color, they should be able to accommodate us, because they have a catalog of colors that are available to work with. And I think we could certainly accommodate that, because that is one of their colors they use. So yeah, that's a good point. We could certainly match that up. We want to match up just as well as we can, just to keep everything looking uniform out there for ourselves and for the public and for Wildwood. Yeah, that I don't think that would be an issue, but I can't give you an exact answer on that.
Mr. Chair, I just have a comment.
Yes.
Bill, Mr. Crispin, it appears from what everything I'm seeing is that this building is going to be situated in a location where it's probably not going to be highly visible from either the roadway or even the trail on the backside. Is that correct?
That is correct. It will actually lie between two current buildings and a few hundred feet off of Grand Avenue, recessed back. And then, yeah, with our current structures, it'll be in between those. So most likely not visible from the trail nor the parking lot that you guys recently put in there. So yeah, you're correct there. It is probably the farthest setback of the current buildings we have.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask a question, are you looking to, in the future, add any signage or lighting to this building?
No, it's strictly a storage building. Any lighting that will be interior for the storage, but no, there will be no signage at all on that, except for the requirements that the fire department requests that we have a number on the building for their purposes of determining which building, but no, there will be no signage.
Chair Ritter, your microphone is muted.
Thank you. Are the overhead doors powered?
No, they will be manual doors. 2 8-foot garage door. And then on the backside, for requirements of the fire department, there'll be a man door on the back side of the building for safety purposes. Just in the event of a situation.
I see gutters, but I don't see any downspouts.
If they're not there, they will be, because it's on a slight hillside, so we'll certainly, for our benefit, want to deflect that water away from the building.
Yes.
They should be in the plans. I haven't gone through the building plans, so yeah, whether they are part of that structure for a storage building,
Mr. Chair, as
Sure.
part of any positive motion, the board can condition its action on the overhead doors matching the color of the trim and gutters, as well as require the downspouts. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members? I'll take that as a no. Would we like to have a motion for approval?
Mr. Chair, I believe the WF&P Railroad would respectfully request a motion to approve the outbuilding as presented, with the addition of the overhead doors matching the color of the trim, gutters and downspouts, and that downspouts be provided as well. Thank you.
I can make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and an acceptance and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. Sounds like it passed.
Thank you very much. This has been a long process and you've just helped us fulfilling a goal that we've been working on for many years. So I thank you guys this evening. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the second item from old business is the fourth review of the architectural elevations and related materials for an authorized 5-story multiple family apartment building with associated first floor commercial space, which is located on a 2.2 acre portion of a larger 5.3 acre site. Amended C8 planned commercial district, town center, downtown district, and neighborhood general district, south side of Main Street, west side of Taylor Road, St. Louis County locator number 23V3 10383, street address 16,700 Main Street. This is the Wildwood Senior Apartments, the prime place at Wildwoods. Mr. Vonich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the board, I do want to note that Michael Kennedy of KAI Design is here tonight, along with Mr. Ed Cohn, representing the application before you. Before the department yields the podium to Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Cohn, I'd just like to give you some background, since many of the members are new relative to this particular request. As the advertisement notes, this is the fourth review by the Architectural Review Board of the city of this particular project. The project is substantial and will be a landmark along Main Street, along with the B&B Theater building and the hotel. It is a 5-story building. The ground floor of that 5-story building is intended for commercial purposes under the downtown district of our town center plan. The remaining 4 floors are intended to be occupied by 60 residential units that'll be tailored more toward a senior age population, but not entirely. At least that's the proposal that was submitted to the city council at its last discussion on this matter. The building will be placed on approximately 2.5 acre lot. That lot adjoins the B&B Theater on the west side, or the east.
You seem to have blocked up.
East side of the theater, has frontage onto Main Street, and will be very, sorry. It says our internet connection is unstable, so I won't repeat myself. I'll let you ask any questions, but suffice to say, this is a very visible location, and the review board that has participated in this process up to this point, we're very concerned about certain design dynamics of the building, the materials, and just the finer points that will make this building stand out relative to all the built environment around it. Ultimately, the Architectural Review Board is actually the first step in the final approval process in this case. Thereafter, a plat is being proposed to subdivide the lot and create the location for the building. And then our Planning and Zoning Commission is ready to proceed forward with the final action on the site development plan package. Today, Ms. Keefe, Mr. Newberry, and I sent to you the minutes from the 3 previous meetings. The department believed those might be essential to the conversation tonight to allow context. You could see the transgression of comments and responses as this particular development went through the 3 meetings prior to tonight. The applicant has brought material and color samples. They are available in our community room. And Mr. Kennedy, the applicant, has agreed to leave them there. So as if the board were to act favorably tonight, you could come by at your leisure and take a look at the colors and the material samples that are available. It is the request of the petitioner tonight to seek a favorable recommendation regarding the building. I only mention that because, again, many of the members are new to this particular request. And as I've mentioned, the request is on its fourth review. With that, I'll conclude. And if there are any questions regarding the property, the area where the property is situated, the zoning process that brought this 5-story building to fruition, so to speak, and any other matters, Ms. Keefe, Mr. Newberry, and I would be glad to answer them at this time. Thereafter, I will yield the platform, the podium, so to speak, to Mr. Kennedy or Mr. Cohn or both for any presentation they have prepared or comments and questions in this regard. Thank you.
Ms. Clark.
Yeah, Mr. Vunich, my first question is regarding the parking on Main Street. We have those parking places on Main Street already, but are those going to be public still for our public, or will they belong to this building and their residents after this goes up?
It's a very good question, Ms. Clark. In the town center plan, we allow on-street parking to be calculated toward the required parking ratio for the building itself. So I believe 18 spaces along Main Street in front of the building have been allocated toward the required parking associated with the use. It's allowed under our town center plan. And according to Andres Dewani, who developed the initial plan, the intent of that is first to reduce the amount of parking as much as possible to that which is needed, not necessarily wanted. It's also to reduce the extent of impervious surface. And it's an acknowledgement that with the commercial component at grade with Main Street, those spaces will be primarily used by those that are visiting the proposed restaurant or other uses of a similar nature. Thank you.
So I do have a follow-up, if I may, Chair Ritter.
Please.
When I look at this plan, I see that there are 6 accessible parking places. And it looks to me like 4 of them are in those parking places that I was talking about on Main Street. If that's the case, will the people who are who have disabilities or wheelchairs or such that live in these buildings have to park on the street and make their way around to the entrance? It just doesn't seem like a very accessible place for parking if you live there. If you're just visiting the retail shops, maybe yes, but if you live there, yeah, that's my question.
Again, Ms. Clark, I appreciate the observation. And it's an observation both the Department of Public Works and the Department of Planning had regarding the site development plan and the components of it, particularly the accessibility of the accessible spaces. And as I mentioned, this has yet to be to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but in the reviews by Departments of Public Works and Planning, we identified that as a comment and sought clarification. And it is our opinion that additional accessible spaces need to be identified in that south parking lot, which is which abuts the entrance to the main entrance into the residential building. When Mr. Kennedy is at the podium, I'm sure he can expand on that if he chooses, but it is a comment. It is something that we've asked that be addressed, so as there are a good distribution of accessible spaces where they need to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Footage, I had a quick question just to clarify. So we have the bound package and then an additional 11 by 17 attachments. Based off of the dates, it seems the additional attachments are the most up to date. And to follow that up, at least in my package, I am missing the front elevation. So I don't know if there was any changes to the front elevation that were made between the two packages or not.
Mr. Bartelsmeyer, I will answer part of it, then I will ask Mr. Kennedy or Mr. Cohn to address it. But yes, Ms. Keefe, Mr. Newberry, and I received revisions after the spiral bound booklet was provided. So instead of trying to insert and make alterations to the spiral bound document, we put the new information on top. So those are modifications that have been made since the original submittal. I'll let Mr. Kennedy describe if there's any changes or any alterations to that front elevation onto Main Street.
Thank you.
Ms. Clark.
Thank you. So I have two more issues, and I'll just put both of them out there. What, I don't know if this has gone to planning and, oh, you said it has not gone to planning zone, but when it goes, I would bring up the landscape plan, and that some of these are not native species that are listed on the landscaping plan. And also I have a question about, there's going to be three signs put out around this building with the number of the street number on it. Do we need 3 signs?
Surprisingly, Ms. Clark, the sign regulations of the city do accommodate an extra or third sign on buildings that have public plazas that are actually accessible to the public from a pedestrian network. For example, the 2 Deerbergs pocket parks as part of the Deerbergs Town Center project, buildings like the Farmer Llewellyn's actually do get 3 signs because of the public plaza. So yes, we've talked to Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Cohn about the signs. We believe the freestanding sign should be integrated into the wall at Eastgate Lane and Main Street. So it's a component of a feature instead of a standalone. And then I believe there'll be signage to the rear by the residential entry, and then signage out front, obviously, in association with Main Street. In terms of landscaping, we have our landscape architect, the consultant reviewing it, and obviously non-natives are frowned upon, so we'll make sure we address that before any plantings begin at the site. Thank you. Mr. Chair, if there's no other comments of Ms. Keefe, Mr. Newberry, or I'll yield the podium to Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Cohn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ed Cohn. I'm a joint venture partner with Mr. Kennedy, a resident of Ward 3, and also just happened the vice chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission has reviewed this project favorably as far as, the zoning ordinance. And we're now moving forward to complete the project so we can get our building permits and begin construction. With your question regarding handicapped accessible parking, yes, there are some in front of the building, which will probably be used by the customers of the retail portion of the project. But the main entrance is on the south side of the building, and that's where the residents will enter, and there's handicapped accessible parking provided for them at the main entrance to the residential component, as well as a breezeway that connects the parking lot at the rear or south side to Main Street. So I hope that answers your question about the parking or the handicapped accessible park. As far as the landscaping, at this point, we're still waiting for the final comments that Mr. Vunich mentioned from the consultant as to what we need to fine tune on the landscaping.
Good evening, board members, and thank you for your time. Thank you for your review of the documents. We also have on the Zoom call the head architect from KAI, the project manager, Mr. Michael Andreessen. And Michael can answer the technical questions for you regarding things like handicap parking. I'm pretty certain that our civil engineering consultant, George Stock and Associates, have carefully looked at the requirement for handicap parking and have indicated on the site plans the appropriate number of spaces. Can you confirm that, Michael?
That is correct.
How many are we showing on the plans in the parking lot? We have 5. Joe says he counts 5. I would also like to add to that the fact that we appreciate the fact that we may have some handicap accessibility residents, and we also have valet parking. Yes, your question.
I'm sorry, Chair Ritter, is it all right if I speak one more time?
Please. I'm sorry
Thank
to
you.
keep muting myself.
Thank you. About that, so if we have accessible parking, what about accessible apartments? Are there accessible apartments as well for wheelchairs, et cetera?
Yes, they are.
How many?
Michael?
Yes, we have, I believe, more than 5% of the units are currently accessible for the IBC requirements. Currently, all the accessible units are located at level 2 of the facility.
Mr. Chair, if I may add one other item. One of the requirements of this particular project was to create a cross-access, cross-parking agreement with the theater. And a number of the theater's accessible parking spaces are also within the 300-foot requirement of the main entrance to the residential area as well.
Yes, they're shown on the plan. I had a question related to building signage for tenants, store tenants, restaurant tenants. Have you, I see some places indicated on the elevations for signage. I'm assuming that the city of Wildwood has an ordinance signage ordinance to govern color, shape, quantity. Is that right, Mr. Vonich?
Yes, Mr. Ritter. Um, Under the sign regulations, for example, let's say the commercial bays that are proposed, signage height is limited to no more than 24 inches. The size is basically a linear foot of square footage for each linear foot of the bay's width. All signage must be individual pinned letters or pinned letters on a single raceway. And then I believe in the ordinance, we are requiring external lighting, but I'd have to check the ordinance to make sure. But yes, we have a long list of sign requirements relative to wall types.
Yes, so we've included the external lighting as well in the design, which was requested by the previous members of the Architectural Review Board.
I have a quick question. I know there were some of the facade concerns expressed as part of the previous meeting minutes. I was wondering if the architect could just walk us through how those particular concerns were addressed in the new elevations.
Okay. Can you, Michael, do you have the slides or share screen?
Just direct me to where you want me to go, and I have that prepared.
Okay, the major concern with the previous ARB board was a question of the I'm looking at trying to figure out which one it is. The size of the band that goes around the building. I can't read that. Okay, holy cow! What's that sheet number? Not either. That's the north elevation of the building, and there's a number of arrows pointing at things on the elevation. But one of the major concerns on that elevation was the height of the lighting fixtures, which we had a little higher near the top of the arches. As you can see on the columns, they've been moved down to the position that the ARB review board members requested. Above the arches is a band. Mike, what do we call that? That banding, that continuous, slightly different color of.
That we have a continuous accent band separating the commercial spaces at level 1 from the resident spaces above.
Yeah. The concern of the ARB board at that time was that the band would serve to suggest the difference between the retail aspect of the building and the residential aspect. We always had the band there, but they wanted it a little larger, and we increased the size of it and the shadow lines that it would introduce because of the depth of the band in itself. On the, if we could go to the east elevation, I'm going to say it's on page 1. Not page 1, it's A7, I'm sorry. It says 1 east elevation, but it's sheet A7. You have it? Yeah. Yep. Nope. Yes, that one. On your right-hand side, just at the corner, there's the light complected area where you see the shape of windows. There's 3 above the arch at the ground floor, and 3 on each level. Nope, you gotta scoot it back. Yeah, there you go. Now put your cursor on the ground floor arch where the retail is. It's the right side of the drawing, right under elevation, right above elevation. There, go up. Okay, those 4 levels of scoring. It's called scoring because there are no windows there. It's just that the drive-it is scored to resemble the windows. It's just a sculpturing technique to give some balance. When we had that originally scored, we had it scored with a smaller window, probably a single window. And they thought that they wanted it to look more like the double window pattern. So we changed the pattern because we didn't disagree. We thought that was a great suggestion. So that's the revised elevation for that. And that pretty much covers the concerns that the previous ARB had. If I missed one, I don't think I did.
I have a question about the banding. In the previous meeting, there was a discussion about the termination points for it, specifically dealing with the west elevation.
Yes.
Basically it's a continuous band on the front elevation, and then it has a termination point on the west.
And they
and
wanted
then
the
continues
to-
it back around the other side. The question for that is, what's the rationale for it not being continuous through that west elevation?
Well, one, I can answer that question. Are you, let me, but you go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, don't forget that the banding was intended to separate retail from residential. As we come around the west side and the east side of the building, the commercial stopped and the banding stops at the end of at the point where the commercial ceases, so that the building is residential on the ground floor and up through the building on that the rest of the west side and on the south side. And besides that, it's banding is more expensive, so it's a cost reduction item, as it's not needed there.
Okay.
That we agreed with them on.
If that's the case, I'll have to ask, why does the banding then show up on the south side at the residential entrance?
Because I like it there. That's true. It serves to separate the canopy and the porte cochere, and it serves as a landing point for it to come into the building. But it works.
Yeah, I
neatly
mean,
there.
it does work in that situation for a material break. There's in that situation, you have different material below and above.
Yes.
So it works in that situation. The question then becomes on that west side. If we are doing it there, basically the only sections that it doesn't have that banding now is that west elevation, or when you get to the rear elevation where you have the covered parking, which in my opinion, makes sense that you're not going to put it on that section over the covered parking because you're talking a banding above 2 feet below it. So the question really becomes why is the banding not continued on the west elevation at this point?
I'm trying to suggest that the members of the ARB did not require it on the back of the building.
No, I know they did not require it on the back of the building, and I'm not saying it should be on the back of the building. My question mostly pertains to the west elevation where we have a break in it.
Well, their comment was not in regards to not having a break, but that the brakes turn the corner. You see that light area where the banding is shown in this west elevation that's up now. It's 2 feet in front of the brick. And so what they wanted to make sure was that the banding turned the corner and died into the brick in a logical manner and not just stopped along the front of the wall. That's what I believe we agreed to. And it does turn the corner and die into the brick. I can't remember their
I would
wording.
note too that elevation is somewhat obscured by the movie theater. So the corner that's wrapped is the corner that's visible from the street.
Yes, that's another good point. I hope that explains the banding reasoning on the behalf of the previous board members.
One other comment, and it's really just a clarification, I guess, because only a couple of us have been here since the last time it was presented. I know last time you guys presented, you had a more extensive covered parking with a second floor outdoor area, essentially.
We called it a terrace.
Yes, your terrace. Obviously, that's been removed.
Well,
Is any comments on that?
It's been replaced with another covered parking design, but obviously that's a COVID scar. The cost increases were such that we had to get $1 million out of the cost of the building, and that garage plaza terrace had to go. That was that we could eliminate without causing by causing the least amount of disruption to the drawing.
Any other member comments?
I have a comment. There's a couple other structures on the site that are programmed in terms of a generator enclosure, trash enclosure. Is there any imagery or idea of what the materials of those might be?
Michael Andreessen.
Yes, absolutely. So the materials of the enclosure are the same materials presented in your packet for the exterior face brick, for the wrapping of the generator enclosure, which is the closest structure that you're referring to the building. That is also, it's not just for the generator, it's for the transformer for the site. The trash enclosure will be utilizing the same exterior finish material as the upper levels of the residence. resident floors. Also, we've provided the samples for your review as well.
The upper floors, is that the EIFS, the insulated material, or is that what you're saying?
Correct.
I don't know if anywhere else in the town center do we use EIFS anywhere else for trash enclosures within the town center district?
Yes, sir. You use them at the hotel. The hotel is an EFS building as well.
No, the trash, is the trash enclosure is that made of EFS? I'm just asking. I don't know if that's common within if that meets town center standard or not.
I apologize if I'm wrong. I thought it was, maybe it isn't. Is the trash enclosure, anybody else know? I can't recall off the top of my head, Mr. Sinney. What I would say is that particular material does cause some concern. Brick is, I would think, a more sturdy material, particularly in an area where we're having dumpsters lifted and dropped. So certainly it's something we can look at with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Michael, I thought you just said that the trash and the generator enclosure and the trash enclosure, what are you using to wrap them?
So these structures themselves are specific to the trash enclosure question. The trash enclosure is a reinforced masonry structure utilizing concrete masonry units, fully grouted with steel reinforcing. We also have steel concrete filled bollards. So in any area where the trash truck or the trash bins will be moved, that is a heavily reinforced area of masonry and steel construction. The exterior finish only of the trash enclosure is designed to match the exterior finish of the main building. So it will be protected, from the trash trucks and the trash bins on the interior and at the gates. So the finish itself is away from those areas of operation. The generator enclosure is a similar structure, CMU reinforced block, steel reinforcing and concrete, but that is clad in a masonry veneer, so a brick, because it's a closer structure to the facility, and so a higher end finish.
And I do have a similar comment on the south elevation, where we're using EIFS on the first level. It looks like all the way down to the sidewalk. I think that's the covered parking area. I do worry about that, and I don't know that condition exists anywhere else in the town center either, where you have EIFS meeting grade on building.
Mr. Sinney, again, I'm at a loss to give you a precise answer, but certainly we can investigate that and provide it to you at a future date. And this is a question, and it will show my ignorance, but I'm glad to show it in a group of architects. Does that type of material create a wicking concern from ground moisture or rainwater or runoff?
I'll answer that if it's appropriate. So this, to clarify, the exterior insulated finish systems come in a variety of standards and quality. So in any area where it will be close to grade, we're going to have a heavy duty system that includes reinforced mesh. So it's a more durable system. It's thicker. Our base details, so the EFS system itself, will not be within 6 inches of the ground. There will be a specific base detail for flashing and water protection. that will be at the very bottom of that system. It will be painted to match. So it will look uniform, but the detail of how those two systems come together, or how the grade comes together with the EPIS, it is not the EPIS coming down and touching the ground. So that is not a concern. Does that help answer the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I have one more question. With regard to the restaurant tenant, is the intent to take any kitchen exhaust out the roof and provide a shaft out? There's no louvers in the facade for that.
Miss Marion.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Do you? Would you?
Miss Marion, could you repeat the question? It was a little, your statement was a little garbled on our end here. Thank you.
Sure. My question was regarding the exhaust for the restaurant tenant and whether that would be taken out the roof or there was any associated facade louvers for that.
No, there are no facade. Are there any facade louvers? I know we have a shaft going all the way to the roof.
Correct. We have several options. We do have a continuous shaft that can go up to the roof. We can also plan for exterior penetration adjacent to the overhead trash doors, which are on the south elevation of the building, in the overhang area.
So as a follow-up to Miss Marion's question, which one have you chosen?
We do not have a kitchen tenant at this point, so that design will need to be worked out with the restaurant tenant.
But there is a shaft provision to the roof for any type 1 or type 2 grease exhaust.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, are there any other questions of the applicant or the department?
Board members, anything else? Mr. Vonich, are we looking to make a motion tonight for approval?
There have been a couple of comments, so certainly I believe the petitioner is respectfully requesting a motion to approve. That motion could be as presented, or if there is concern relating to the trash enclosure, the exhaust issue and the vent, which appears to go to the roof, or any of the others, certainly that could be included as part of a motion. But yes, if there is a feeling amongst the board members that a motion is appropriate, I believe the department and the petitioner would respectfully request such. Thank you.
I would make a motion to accept as it stands. Is there anybody who would like to amend that motion?
I would also be interested in at least seeing what exactly the trash and generator enclosures are going to look like. So if it's possible for those to be presented at a different date. So just so we can verify exactly what, because, I are talking about finished materials will match the building, but it would be nice to see what exactly we're looking at. So
I think we have elevations. They didn't include them in the package, but don't we have elevations ready for those trash enclosures? Michael, I think I've seen them. I've been looking through here for them, but I don't see where they were included.
Yes, they are not, those auxiliary structures are not part of the package. It was the main building and the signage only. The section through, or I guess the elevation of the monument sign and the site walls is very similar to what the trash enclosure structure, the generator enclosure structure will be. There's a brick veneer with a cast stone cap. But we do not have a visual in the packet that you have that represents the trash enclosure.
What are the
Mr.
doors
Chair.
for the trash enclosure?
Pardon, sir?
What are the doors for the trash enclosure and the generator enclosure?
They're steel reinforced gates, and we are anticipating a wood look Trex. If you're familiar with Trex, screening system on the gates.
Mr. Chair, if I could offer a suggestion,
Please.
the motion could be to approve the building as presented unless there are other items of concern. And then as a condition of that motion, to have the trash enclosure and the generator enclosure brought back to the next meeting for approval, or excuse me, review and action. Thank you.
Then let's take that as a motion.
I'll make a motion and I'll add in there the approval of the signage as well.
All in favor?
Can I ask you,
Aye.
can we get a little more
Aye.
definition on the, what he means by the signage?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Kennedy is requesting a little clarification on the signage. I know I interrupted the vote, so I apologize.
Oh, that's all right. Mr. Bartlesmeyer, would you like to expand on that?
I was just commenting on the 3 signages that were presented. So I was just adding that to the building and signage as those elements to be approved.
Oh, okay.
All
I
right,
thought,
we
it seemed that you were looking for more information on the signage.
Sorry for the confusion. No, not more information on the signage, just add them to the list of approval items.
Okay, we'll go back for all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? All abstained? Got another winner.
Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you guys for your comments and your concern. And I like the line earlier for keeping our city beautiful. We're committed to that as well. We think we have an outstanding project and a building that will complement the other structures currently in town center. And we want to make you proud. Thank you again.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your efforts. Thank you. And all the fun, I've lost my agenda. It's gotta be here somewhere. Thank you. We have no items that are not ready for action. We have one other item, is the selection of officers for the Architectural Review Board. Mr. Vonich, I'm going to ask you to lead us through this.
Pleasure, sir. As the members are aware, we've had kind of a turnover in the membership, which has led to some of our officers to leave the board as well. Secretary Ritter has been acting as chair at the last several meetings. And tonight we can entertain motions for the officer positions, which are chair, vice chair, and secretary from the floor. It can be done individually per officer position, or if there is a desire, a slate of candidates can be offered as a single motion. With that, I'm available for any comments or questions. This is somewhat unusual in that the Architectural Review Board does not have a set of bylaws per se. So again, we are doing it consistent with how we would do it normally if there was a nominating committee, accepting nominations from the floor, or for individual officer positions, or again, as mentioned, as slate. Thank you.
Mr. Vudich, just to clarify, alternates are not allowed to be a chair or any of that, correct?
That's correct, sir. It's regular members serve as officers.
All right, thanks. Just want to clarify that.
Is there anybody to make a nomination for a slate or a position? I see we're not high on volunteerism here.
Mr. Chair, if I could offer an option, we'll send out to all the members the names of the regular members as well as the alternates. And then you can take a look at the individuals that are available for the officer positions. And then we can put this on as the first item on the agenda next month if we have a meeting.
Sounds like a plan, Joe. Thank you.
My pleasure, sir.
Next item is public comment. Special procedures will be placed to address this virtual meeting and participation and such.
Mr. Chair, I would beg your indulgence as we check the attendees to see if there are any on tonight. There are not. And there is no one in attendance now at City Hall, so there is no public comment.
Fabulous. The next meeting date is October 14th. And closing remarks.
Ms. Keefe, Ms. Newberry, and I would like to thank you for your attendance and participation. As I always say, we can't do it without you, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll call it a night. Thank you all.
Could we have
Thanks,
a
Eric.
motion second to adjourn with a voice vote?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Second.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Thank you all. Good night. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.